everyone, and good afternoon. We want to welcome you to our webinar today. Joining us is Mary Malone from Innovia Consulting, and Mary's going to be presenting on what happens after the oops. Service recovery saves the day. And I know you're all eager to get started with the presentation, so before I pass it over to Mary, I just want to remind you that we are recording this webinar as well as all of our webinars, and they will be posted to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to type them in the questions box, and we will get them answered at our Q&A time at the end of our session. So now I'm going to pass it on over to Mary to kick off our presentation.
Hi, Angie. Thank you very much. And I'm excited to be here with you all today. Angie mentioned that I'm Mary Malone, and I'm a customer engagement specialist here at Innovia. I want to just give you a little bit of background about me. I am a data geek and a culture freak. And so you can read a little bit about my background. I've worked a lot with survey data research companies and moved a lot of data around with them. And then in addition to that, I became sort of a subject matter expert on using that data to improve the customer and employee experience and performance improvement and all the different techniques for making things better once surveys identify where you can make things better for your customers. So for today's outline, I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction about why I came to know and love this topic, and then talk about an oops and service recovery, give sort of a taxonomy or 5 A's of the service recovery process. Throughout, I'm going to be talking about service recovery as a possible wow, and then sort of the cultural components that you need to really have successful service recovery. And then at the end, I'm happy to have a discussion to answer any questions that you have, and to talk about this, which again is one of my favorite things to talk about. So the first thing I want to do is kind of just give a little bit of an introduction. If you're interested in learning more about this, I did do a webinar on August 19th, as well as a blog on September 23rd. Both are available, sorted by last name on our Innovia website. So like all the blogs and all of the webinars, you can find the information there. But I talk a lot about the concept of good to great in customer service, or talk about moving it from now to wow, or creating memorable moments and stories. And in that, I talk about what I call sort of my duck story, and use the term finding your duck. And it's really about how can you create a wow. And so what happened is that as I learned more about creating a wow, I also started to realize that an oops possibly could lead to a wow. And I actually, mistakes happen. This isn't about outcome doesn't equal intent. We're human. Things go wrong. We started to look at some data about well-resolved complaints, potentially leading to some loyalty. And that led to the idea about how can we design service recovery and stick a wow in it. And a colleague and I got so excited about the topic, we actually wrote a book, a manual called Making It Right. It was healthcare service recovery tools, techniques, and best practices. So what I'm here to do today then is to introduce the concept of the oops and service recovery, and talk about how you might be able to apply it in your organization. So the first thing I'd like to do is really talk about what's an oops. And an oops can come from a variety of sources. It might be a service hiccup, something that maybe even the customer didn't know about, but you do, because you have standards that you didn't meet. It was something that happened quickly and went away, and just a little hiccup. Customer might not know or never need to know about it, but it is potentially an oops there. And sometimes a little hiccup, the customer might notice something, but it might not be a big deal. The next kind of oops might be something that is a concern, and this might be less tangible, but it's something where the customer might have some doubt about our expertise, about how something is going, We may have created a situation that causes them to doubt that we're the right people to solve their problem or our product is the right one for them. It's sort of a concern, if you will. And then you have a complaint. Those are easy to spot. They usually start with the words, I have a complaint for you. And then we have a situation that I'm going to call a catastrophic event. And an oops is not a catastrophic event. So I want to be clear about this. Certain things happen that it's really not about service recovery. It's about a full-on entire company involved mitigating sort of a bad situation. Really, I'm talking about sort of a lower level service hiccup, concern, or complaint. Now, what really changed my thinking about the oops was a book called A Complaint is a Gift. And a lot of organizations, what I learned from Janelle Barlow, who is one of the authors of this book, was that a lot of organizations spend a lot of time trying to minimize complaints. And while that's not necessarily a bad goal, she really would flip it on their head and say, actually, I'd rather know about them. I'd rather find them. And I'll talk a little bit more about it. She says, because each complaint, each concern, each time we have a hiccup, it's a gift to us. And to embrace, not minimize the number, but to embrace each one of them as a gift, a potential opportunity to make it right, to make it better. And it also shows that when we're getting them, that our customers are engaged with us. And think about your own behavior when it comes to complaints. Sometimes you're just so angry you don't even want to complain, you're ready to walk. So the idea is that when a complaint happens, it's the customer still reaching out and saying, hey, I want to be in relationship with you. I'm going to tell you and give you the opportunity to fix that. So then what, if we sort of have an understanding of what an oops is, what is service recovery? Well, service recovery is restorative to the relationship. It says something's been damaged in how we're working together with this customer, and how can we move them from where they are with a concern, with a complaint, back to either equal to where we were in our relationship before, or actually move them one step further to being more satisfied. So service recovery starts with a philosophy that really goes back and says, we're not perfect. Mistakes happen. Let's turn them into gifts so that we can continue to do better, to learn more, to serve our customers better. It is a process. So what are the activities that might lead you to move somebody from point A to being at B or better in your relationship with them? And then you might also have something like a program. And I'll come back a little bit to talk about some names of programs that I've seen people use that take the process and make it their own in just a minute or two. So what got me interested in the service recovery opportunities, if you will, was a conversation I had maybe 20 years ago with Roger Dow, who at the time was the director of customer service for Marriott hotels worldwide. And what Marriott data had been looking at customer service data, and what they had realized was that customers who'd had a well-resolved problem often were more loyal to the organization than customers who hadn't experienced any problems. And so it led Roger in a talk to say, maybe we should create a little problem that we can solve perfectly for every customer. And he was one of the first people I heard to identify what he calls the service recovery paradox, again, which is that if you have a customer without service failure, they have a certain level of loyalty to you. But in fact, you can have a service failure, do service recovery, and end up with more loyal customers for how well you did the service recovery. Now that brought on a bunch of work on my end to continue to explore this opportunity. And what I realized is there's a difference between service recovery done well and service recovery, as I like to say, sort of left to chance. We think people are going to do it, but we don't know exactly how well it is that they're going to do it. And this speaks to the need for a design in service recovery. So a few years ago, 20 years ago, 17 years ago, I looked at data from over 2 million patients in healthcare and looked at the complaint resolution. And what we learned was when customers, patients in this case, gave a 4 on a 5-point scale to how well their complaints were resolved, only 26% of them said that their likelihood of recommending was a 5 out of 5. But if we did a great job of complaint resolution, earning a 5 of 5 on a 5-point scale, 70.6% of them said their likelihood of recommending was a 5.5. 5 out of 5. So again, complaint resolution done at the level of 4, complaint resolution done at the level of 5, and you can see the difference in likelihood of recommending. Again, it really speaks to the need for not leaving service recovery to chance, but to really designing a program. So what we learned from that, again, it was what sparked my interest in the whole topic of service recovery, was it's not the issue that's the issue. It's the way the issue is handled that becomes the bigger issue. So I want you to think about, if we were in a live format, I would be asking you these questions, but I want you to think about what it is that you want. What do you expect when something goes wrong? And having done a fair amount of reading and reviews of the literature, for the most part, what I've summarized here are the 6 things that consistently show up that people want when they've identified something has gone wrong, when they've identified an oops. That people, you, want people to apologize or acknowledge or both the fact that you're experiencing inconvenience. And this is where empathy comes in. To listen and empathize and ask open-ended questions. We want to be heard when something goes wrong. We want to be offered a fair fix. And maybe we even want to be part of what deciding a fair fix is. People like a value-added atonement. I might call that a token, and I'll come back to talking about what a token is later. People want, after there's been something gone wrong, they want the next promise of how it's going to be fixed to be kept. I think if one place where service recovery goes wrong is we make the next promise and then we don't deliver on that. And now that's when you end up with not having done great service recovery. And then follow up, someone to check back and see, hey, did we fix it? Did it work for you? We've worked through our processes. It should never happen again. Again, I'm sorry that this happened to you. So what I've done, and a colleague and I years ago, Jackie Ryan, came up with 5 A's, and actually we talked about it as 6 A's, to service recovery success. And each one builds on the other one. So there's an awareness that an oops happened. There's an acknowledgement to the customer. I see that this happened, and I'm sorry that it happened. Now, steps 2 and 3 can sometimes be combined, but if you just say I'm sorry for no reason, you haven't quite gotten the whole piece of empathy out. Then you want to actively listen to their story, what they propose as a solution, and then you want to act to amend it. And then finally, I always say the 6th A is avoid future failures, and that's the feedback process that service recovery involves. Now, I mentioned before that there are programs that you can take this concept and sort of process, if you will, of moving the customer from one to another and put it into your own organization. So I've seen people take words like erase and use, say, evaluate or examine the situation, regrets are expressed, act to resolve, satisfy customer needs, and evaluate, taking one letter from each of them, from each letter in the word erase, to make it the step, to make it easy to remember. Another one would be care, where it's C is connect with the person, A is apologize, R is resolve, and E is evaluate. And I've seen one even called relate, where they recognize the problem, show empathy, listen carefully, apologize, take action, and explain. And I do want to just again point out that the apology part is important, but also the empathy plays an important role in it as well. So again, this would be sort of a framework, what I present here, and then different organizations may develop programmatically something to talk about in their whole organization, perhaps make it a little bit less theoretical and a little bit more practical for their team. I do just want to quickly go through some of the steps and just give a couple of pointers about them. Step one for me is awareness, and I always say that if we don't have awareness about what an oops is or that one has occurred, we can't initiate service recovery. And if we don't know what our service recovery philosophy and process or program is, we can't implement it either. So again, so there's a lot of awareness around, we expect complaints. These are our standards. When we don't live up to our standards, we've created an oops. When customers complain about things, we have this process and it's called service recovery. So that just is a lot of awareness that's very, very important. The next A is to acknowledge. And again, this is just that we appreciate customers, our organization cares about them. We acknowledge the situation that the customer has brought to us. It's again, acknowledge and apologize, slightly different. I'm sorry that this happened to you. I'm acknowledging, I am both apologizing and acknowledging my understanding of the event. I'm saying, oh, that must not have been a very good experience for you. I can see how that would have inconvenienced you. I'm acknowledging that we didn't do as an organization what you would have wanted us to do. We fell down through their eyes. And again, then that next step is the apology. And again, remember, the first thing that people want is a sincere apology. So if you're going to do service recovery, you have to be able to give the apology. And an apology is, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry we inconvenienced you. I'm sorry that we left you down. I'm sorry that I was wrong. We don't always have to use the royal we. I made a mistake. I am sorry that I did that. And if we really meet their needs by showing that we are sorry for what happened to them. Now, sometimes people get into situations when it's like, well, I don't want them to blame us, or, the magic word is I'm sorry. You don't have to say I am sorry and, you can have the rest of everything for free. We just have to put that I'm sorry in. Now, the other thing is as important is to, as a friend of mine says, leave your big butt out of it. So what tends to happen is we teach the word I'm sorry, and then we try to but. So I'm sorry, but, and then we go through all the reasons that basically sound to the customer like excuses, and we don't care. So again, get the whole apology out. I'm sorry that we inconvenienced you. Pause. Let's talk about how we're going to resolve it. Now, they may have done something wrong according to your policy, But if you ruin your apology by putting your big butt into it, you might as well not give an apology, because it's not taken as sincere. So again, then it's the actively listen. Let's talk about how we're going to resolve it. Or, I'm sorry that you're feeling this way. Can you tell me more about the situation? And sometimes you're doing it, again, we might be doing it on a Teams call, we might be doing it in person, we might be doing it via email, but it really matters how well we listen, and listen for the words that people use, the verbal, and then nonverbal communication, and between the lines, how people express themselves. And again, it helps to be able to, in more advanced skills, some people are, just passive. They're just, it's a tiny little problem. They don't want to make a big deal about it, but you can tell they're mad. And other people are totally irate about it. And other people are ready to post it on Twitter. As you get better at doing service recovery, you start to understand a little bit more of the different types of customers, and the kinds of complaints that they might have that are very specific to your organization. And then being a really good listener and understanding the customer and the situation they're in helps you to formulate an appropriate response. One of the things about responses is I'm a big believer that they should be planned and they should be appropriate. They should be planned and they should be proportionate. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but every company has 5 complaints that they hear from customers. Everybody does. And the question I would ask is, so today, if a customer brought this up to you, what is a proportionate and planned response to that complaint? Because you have the ability, what 5 there are, you can design your response right now in terms of how you want to handle that. Once you've actively listened, you then sort of act to amend or to make it right. And again, the idea here is to take a negative situation, turn it into a neutral or positive. So you're conveying sincere concern and empathy. I talk about this as sad but glad. I am sad this happened, but I'm very glad that you told me. You can inquire about what people think is a fair resolution and resolve it. And again, make sure that it's resolved, and make sure that you follow up. And then you can offer that token as a restorative act, right? I can't give you back the time you lost on this, but I can offer you a cup of coffee as a token of my regret. It's not a one-for-one exchange, but it acknowledges that there was an inconvenience that was created. And you can find ways to turn that token into a wow. That story becomes different that they're telling when they had a complaint, they brought it to you, and then your resolution was a wow for them. And it could be the token that was the wow, it could be the above and beyond that you did, but that's turning it into a wow. And again, service recovery, as I mentioned, planned in advance, proportionate to the harm, and then also, as much as possible, delivered by the customer-facing employee. So, for years, Ritz-Carlton, I don't know if they still have a policy, but every frontline employee at Ritz-Carlton is allowed to spend up to, I think it was at one time, $500 to make it right for a customer. And they are trusted. They don't have to ask. They just are supposed to do it. Now, Ritz-Carlton is a certain kind of product. $500 is the amount that works for them. But you can take that model of trusting the front line to make the right decision, and apply it to your organization or your situation to resolve it and empower the people closest to the customer to do service recovery and solve it for them. So again, let's figure out those ways that service recovery, if you've designed it, for example, in advance, that it could create a wow and create a memorable moment so that the story the person tells is not that I had a complaint with ABC company, but I had a complaint and this is how they resolved it. And the story is about this great resolution, great problem solving, great empathy, great result that you achieved for them. The final piece is to think about cultural components of success in service recovery. And that would be going back to the original complaint as a gift, to have a no fear organization where people who bring up complaints are valued, that you might even have a contest to see who can find the most obscure complaints. Then it is really about training and implementing the process and the program that you decide on, observing and holding people accountable for using the service recovery process that you've put in place, and then taking some action, that step 6, that avoid future failures. So another way of thinking about that is everybody's going to have top 5, top 10 customer complaints. My question is the number 1 this year the same as it was last year and the year before? You're always going to have something that you disappoint customers on. Again, go back to the very beginning. We're human. Mistakes happen. The key is that once we discover them, is to hardwire and use that data to adjust your processes so that you learn from service recovery. It's another great source of information for process improvement and for using to get better at what it is that you do. So in conclusion, service recovery is to do the job right the first time, but when you don't have effective while producing complaint handling, and that can lead to increased satisfaction and loyalty. Again, customers that have well-resolved complaints have higher levels of loyalty to the organization than a customer who didn't have complaints. Customers who have very well-resolved complaints are to the organization than those that have complaints that were resolved just okay. So an effective handling of those complaints, the service recovery is to identify them, resolve them effectively, and learn from the recovery so that you can continue to find ways to do the job right the first time. So that concludes what I have to share about service recovery. I hope that you can see that I absolutely love talking about the opportunity to do better that a well-defined service recovery program has, the opportunity to restore customers' faith in our companies, in us, the businesses, the product, etc., is awesome, and it's well within our power to do that. So I guess I'd like to turn it back over to the group and to ask who has the first question.
Thank you, Mary. For those of you that want to be the first one to ask Mary a question, please go ahead and type your questions in the questions box. I'll go and start with the first one that came through. Can anyone do service recovery, Mary?
So I think the answer to that is yes. I think anybody can do service recovery. But I don't like to leave it to chance in terms of how well it's going to be done. So I do believe that anybody can do service recovery. As I mentioned, I think it's important that people closest to the customers do it. And I do believe that training, being in a culture that values the complaint as a gift, so that all employees know that the sin, if you will, is not the complaint. It's not bringing it forward. We want to have complaints. So I do believe anybody can, if they're in a culture that values complaints, and they're close to the customer and they've been trained to handle them well. So yes, anybody can handle training, can handle service recovery, can do service recovery.
Okay, thank you. And how would I get started with implementing a service recovery program at my company?
So like most things, to be successful, you need a leader champion. Depending on your company's current culture, I've seen this led well by department heads, division leaders, but quite honestly, it helps if there's a senior leadership really making a commitment to improvement, to have an honest discussion straight off about where the organization, where its failures are, where whatever metrics are used in sort of performance metrics, where customer satisfaction surveys or market surveys tell the organization about how it does, actual complaints that have come in, and really be honest about how the organization isn't perfect and that we want to find these. We want to be a no-fear organization, and we want to embrace the gift, if you will, of these complaints. And then once we've said that we want to embrace the complaint as a gift, then to start on the process of teaching about service recovery, but also fixing complaints that crop up in the process of discovery, and also then teaching before you can fix a complaint. Let's say timeliness is your big problem. Before you resolve the timeliness problem, so that it's not a complaint anymore, teaching how to best resolve a customer who has a complaint about timeliness in a planned and proportionate way until the fix is in.
Okay, thank you. We do have another question that came through. At what point would you normally want to pull a manager in? The moment someone asks for a manager, or try to resolve ourselves?
So, I think it's going to be situational, but this is what my experience has been. If you arm your frontline team so that they feel so comfortable in the service recovery process or program that you have, that they're trained to handle almost anything, the number of times that the customer says, I want to speak with a manager, is almost zero, because you've trained that person to handle such a wide variety of the kinds of complaints. So if you're willing to invest in the training so that if I'm the frontline employee, I'm like, bring it on, I can handle anything. Come on, give me your worst complaint. We've role played every complaint that I can think of. Bring it on. Then if I can't resolve it and they want to talk to a manager, then I'm happy to say, as soon as they mention a manager, then have the manager get involved. But my ultimate point would be to train your employees so the customer doesn't feel so frustrated that they have to say, I want to talk to your manager. Because I want to talk to your manager means like, I'm not getting anywhere with you. You're not listening, you're not responding, you're not giving me what I need. So I hope that answered the question, but that's how I would, obviously if they want to speak to a manager, you want to grant them that request. I would probably say to somebody something along the lines of, I am so sorry that I have been unable to listen effectively and resolve this for you. I'll be happy to get my manager. Are you sure there's nothing more I can do for you? Nope. Okay, then you can talk to my manager. But hopefully we wouldn't get there because I have that training behind me.
Great. Thanks, Mary. If anyone else has any further questions that you would like to ask Mary, please feel free to type those in and we can get those addressed for you. All right, Mary, it looks like those are all the questions that we have for you today. Like I said, if you have any additional questions that you want to address to Mary, you can freely do that. Mary's got her information up there. Or you can contact your account manager here at Inovia Consulting. So thank you, Mary, for presenting today. Really appreciate it. It was very good stuff that you had explained to us. I think we're gonna all have more knowledge of the recovery process from here on out.
Well, great, Angie. I appreciate being here. And like Angie said, if you've got any questions, this is one of my favorite topics. And so if I can help you or your team just to learn about it, talk about it, I'd be happy to do so. So thanks again.
All right, and everyone, thank you for joining us. Or if you're watching on demand, we thank you for taking some time out. And just to let you know, we do have more webinars coming up. Tomorrow, December 10th, we have Kevin Naughton from Inovia Consulting, and he's going to be presenting on Intro to Power BI, Transform Data into Insights. And then next week, Tuesday, December 15th, we have Gary Harpenow and Kevin Clifford from Inovia Consulting, and they will be presenting on Enhance Your Organizational Culture with Continuous Process Improvement. So check out our website for more of our upcoming events, and that's inovia.com/events. And I just want to make you all aware of our new training workshops that we have going on. We have a variety of training workshops to choose from, and you can check out the workshop page at inovia.com/workshops for more information and to get registered for the workshop that fits best for you. And we do have our Inovia podcast going on. If you have not heard of it already, it's called the Inovia Conversation. And we just want to encourage you to listen to our selection that our hosts, Steve Waltz and Jeff Pergolski, have provided to us. And you can find out about all the different podcast platforms to listen to on our podcast page. And that's inovia.com/podcast. So check out the selection and subscribe so you'll be notified when those new episodes air. All right, everyone, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon on another Inovia webinar. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time.